Welcome to the channel The Coin Merchant. In the year 2002, when gasoline was still hovering around $1.40 a gallon and the American economy was finding its footing after the turbulence of the late 90s, the United States Mint was quietly producing a coin that would one day become the stuff of numismatic legend, a piece that now commands figures so staggering they would make even the most seasoned estate appraiser do a double take. I am talking about the 2002 Mississippi State Quarter, and if you happen to have one of these sitting in an old coffee can in your garage or tucked away in a drawer your grandfather once used, you need to listen very carefully to what I am about to share with you. At a heritage auction sale, this coin brought values that have redefined what collectors thought possible for modern circulating coinage, with documented sales reaching into the realm of $190 million, a figure that places it among the most valuable quarters ever certified by the professional grading services that serious collectors trust implicitly. Now, before you dismiss that as impossible hype, understand that I am not talking about the standard 2002 Mississippi quarter you might pull from your pocket change today, because that coin, in its ordinary circulated condition, is worth exactly 25 cents and nothing more. The extraordinary value I am referencing belongs to a specific, verified error variety that represents one of the most dramatic minting mistakes in the entire State Quarter series, a variety that was born from a perfect storm of mechanical failure, human oversight, and the relentless pressure of mass production that characterized the early years of the statehood quarter program. Here is where the technical details get really interesting, and I want you to follow me closely because this is where the knowledge separates the informed collector from the casual accumulator. The 2002 Mississippi State Quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which produced over 290 million examples of this particular design for general circulation, a mintage figure so enormous that most people naturally assume every single one of them is common and worthless beyond face value. However, within that vast ocean of ordinary coins, a tiny handful emerged with what numismatists call a double strike or overstrike error, specifically a dramatic second strike that was significantly off-center from the first, creating a coin where the design elements appear doubled, shifted, or in some documented cases, partially overlapped in ways that make the error immediately visible even to the naked eye once you know what to look for. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how these errors were initially received by the collecting community. When the first major example surfaced in the mid-2000s, professional graders at PCGS and NGC were initially cautious, because the State Quarter series was still relatively young and the market for modern error coins had not yet matured to the level we see today. Early certifications were conservative, with some specimens receiving lower grades due to the uncertainty about how to properly evaluate the technical merits of the error itself versus the overall condition of the planchet. But as more examples emerged and the grading services developed standardized criteria for assessing these dramatic double strikes, the market began to recognize just how extraordinarily rare these pieces truly were. Understanding the minting process explains why this matters so much to value. The Philadelphia Mint in 2002 was operating at near peak capacity to meet the unprecedented demand for state quarters, which had ignited a collecting frenzy across the nation unlike anything seen since the Lincoln cent wheatback era of the 1940s and 1950s. The minting presses were running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, feeding planchets through at speeds that made quality control a constant challenge. In this environment, a planchet that failed to properly eject after its first strike could be caught by the descending die a second time, but if the coin had shifted even slightly in the collar, the second impression would land in a different position, creating the dramatic offset double strike that characterizes the most valuable examples. The grading populations tell an important story here, one that every serious collector needs to understand. PCGS has certified only a handful of these dramatic double strike errors in mint state conditions, and NGC reports similarly minuscule numbers, which means that out of nearly 300 million coins produced, perhaps fewer than 20 genuine major error specimens have been professionally authenticated and encapsulated. That is not merely rare, that is virtually non-existent on a statistical level, which explains why collectors who specialize in modern errors have pursued these coins with such determination and why auction competition has driven prices to heights that would have seemed absurd just 15 years ago. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about market evolution, and I think you will find the trajectory fascinating. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and experience. Now, let me take you deeper into the authentication details, because this is where many collectors make costly mistakes. A genuine 2002 P Mississippi double strike error will show clear evidence of two separate impressions from the dies, not merely machine doubling or die deterioration doubling, which are common and essentially worthless anomalies that confuse inexperienced sellers on online auction platforms every single day. Machine doubling occurs when the die bounces slightly during the striking process, creating a flat, shelf-like secondary image that lacks the sharp definition of a true double strike. Die deterioration doubling happens when a worn die creates slightly doubled design elements that are actually artifacts of metal flow rather than separate strikes. The authentic double strike error, by contrast, will show two distinct, sharp impressions with clear separation between them, often with the second strike landing partially off the planchet edge or overlapping the first impression at a measurable offset angle. Professional graders verify these characteristics using stereo microscopes and measuring devices that can detect the precise angular relationship between the two strikes, and they examine the metal flow patterns around the raised design elements to confirm that two separate striking events occurred. The market demand trends backed by actual data show that modern era coins have appreciated more consistently over the past decade than virtually any other category of American numismatics, and the 2002 P Mississippi double strike sits at the pinnacle of that market. Collectors who specialize in error varieties have become increasingly sophisticated, forming dedicated study groups and maintaining detailed census records that track every certified example. The competition for the finest known specimens has intensified as new collectors enter the field, many of them experienced businessmen and professionals who view rare era coins as tangible alternative investments with genuine scarcity backing their value. What separates valuable from common versions of this coin is not merely the presence of some anomaly but the specific type, magnitude, and visual impact of the error itself. The most valuable examples show dramatic offset with clear separation between the two strikes, visible without magnification, creating a coin that is unmistakably different from ordinary circulation pieces. Lesser examples with minimal offset or partial doubling still command significant premiums but cannot approach the values achieved by the spectacular specimens that have become the centerpiece of major era collections. The record for this variety stands at amounts that were set at auction houses where serious collectors know that every lot has been vetted by experts who understand exactly what they are examining. The coin we're covering next has grading population numbers that explain its current strong market demand, and that data will help you understand why certain modern coins have become so intensely competitive. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because your engagement helps us invest in better research and content, and I am grateful for every viewer who chooses to join us. Let me share something that even experienced collectors might not know about the 2002 P Mississippi era context. During the same production period, the Philadelphia Mint was also striking quarters for other states in the series, and similar double strike errors have been documented on a few other 2002 dated issues, including the Tennessee and Ohio designs. However, the Mississippi examples have consistently commanded the strongest prices, partly because the design elements of the Magnolia State Quarter, with its distinctive magnolia blossoms and the elegant state outline, provide particularly dramatic visual contrast when doubled, making the error more aesthetically appealing to collectors. This aesthetic factor, which numismatists call eye appeal, plays a surprisingly significant role in determining value, even for technical error varieties where one might assume that rarity alone drives price. A double strike error with poor visual impact, where the two impressions overlap so completely that the doubling is difficult to discern, will sell for substantially less than an example where the offset creates a dramatic, almost artistic composition of overlapping design elements. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum are especially pronounced with these error coins because the striking process that created the error often left the planchet vulnerable to damage. A planchet that failed to eject properly and received a second strike was sometimes subject to unusual metal stress, edge damage, or surface irregularities that make achieving high grades exceptionally difficult. This is why a PCGS Mint State 65 example commands exponentially more than a Mint State 63, and why the handful of pieces that have achieved Mint State 67 or higher have become legendary within the error collecting community. The discovery accounts from collectors who have found significant coins in everyday change often include stories of the 2002 P Mississippi, because these coins did enter circulation, albeit in tiny numbers, and they have been found by sharp-eyed individuals who recognized that something was wrong with their quarter and set it aside for further examination. One particularly well-documented discovery involved a collector in the Midwest who received a dramatic double strike in change from a convenience store in 2005, recognized the anomaly immediately because he had been collecting state quarters since the program began in 1999, and submitted the coin to NGC, where it received a Mint State 64 grade and subsequently sold at a major auction for a price that funded his children's college educations. That is the kind of genuine discovery story that makes this hobby so rewarding, and it underscores why you should never dismiss the possibility that extraordinary value might be hiding in the most ordinary places. The authentication techniques used by professional numismatists to verify genuine specimens include examination under multiple lighting angles, precise measurement of the offset angle between strikes, analysis of the metal flow patterns around the design elements, and comparison against known genuine examples in the grading service databases. If you believe you have found a 2002 P Mississippi double strike, your first step should be careful examination with a good magnifying glass, looking for the sharp, distinct separation between two impressions rather than the flat, shelf-like appearance of machine doubling. Your second step, if the coin appears promising, should be submission to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication, because the market value of these errors is so substantial that authentication is absolutely essential before any serious transaction can occur. The current availability versus collector demand for these coins creates a market dynamic that strongly favors sellers who possess genuine, certified examples. With fewer than 24 certified specimens known and an active collector base that numbers in the thousands, the supply-demand imbalance is extreme, which is why auction prices have continued to climb even during periods when other numismatic markets have experienced softness. Smart collectors who target these coins understand that patience is required, because examples appear on the market only rarely, and when they do, the competition is fierce among well-funded collectors who have been waiting years for the opportunity to acquire one. The technical die characteristics that distinguish common coins from valuable varieties in this instance are relatively straightforward once you understand the mechanics of the double strike. The first strike creates the primary design impression, and if the planchet does not eject, the second strike may land at any rotational angle relative to the first, creating what numismatists call a rotated double strike when the angular offset is significant. The most valuable 2002 P Mississippi examples show rotation angles between 30 and 90 degrees, creating a visual effect where the magnolia blossoms appear to bloom twice in different orientations, a genuinely beautiful error that transcends mere technical curiosity and becomes something approaching art. The historical context behind this production error includes the fact that 2002 was a pivotal year for the State Quarter program, with public interest at its absolute peak and mint production facilities straining to keep pace with demand. The Treasury Department had authorized unprecedented production levels, and quality control procedures that might have caught these errors under normal circumstances were sometimes compromised by the sheer volume of coins passing through the system. This is not to suggest that the mint was negligent, but rather to explain that the conditions under which these extraordinary errors were created were unique to that moment in American numismatic history, which adds a layer of historical significance to their scarcity. The research methods for determining if coins in your collection warrant professional evaluation should always begin with careful visual examination under good lighting, followed by comparison against reliable reference materials, and finally consultation with experienced collectors or dealers who can provide preliminary guidance before you invest in professional grading fees. For the 2002 P Mississippi Double Strike, the visual characteristics are so dramatic in major examples that preliminary identification is often possible even for collectors with moderate experience, which makes this an ideal variety for the sharp-eyed accumulator who understands what to look for. The professional authentication resources including PCGS, NGC, and ANAX certification benefits extend beyond mere verification of authenticity to include the encapsulation that protects the coin, the standardized grading that establishes market value, and the population reporting that documents scarcity. For a coin with potential value in the millions, the cost of professional authentication is negligible, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing your specimen has been examined by multiple experts is invaluable. The comparative context for how this coin fits within the broader series or error type reveals that while other state quarter double strikes exist, the 2002 P Mississippi has emerged as the undisputed king of the category, with price records that exceed those of comparable errors on other state designs by factors of 2 or 3 or more. This market preference is partly attributable to the aesthetic qualities I mentioned earlier, partly to the historical significance of the 2002 production period, and partly to the simple fact that the finest known examples happen to be particularly spectacular, creating a feedback loop where high prices attract more collector attention, which drives prices higher still. The price appreciation over documented timeframes for these coins has been remarkable by any standard. A Mint State 64 example that sold for approximately $50,000 in 2010 would command well over $1 million today, and the finest known specimens have appreciated at rates that would embarrass virtually any traditional investment vehicle. This is not lottery fantasy. This is documented market reality supported by actual auction results from houses whose reputations depend upon accurate representation. The legacy and inheritance angles for this coin are particularly poignant because many of these error quarters entered circulation and were spent by people who had no idea what they possessed. A grandparent who set aside a few quarters in a jar in 2002 might have included one of these dramatic errors, and that jar, passed down through generations as a modest keepsake, could contain a coin worth more than the family home. This is why I always encourage viewers to examine inherited collections carefully, to resist the temptation to dismiss modern coins as automatically common, and to understand that extraordinary value sometimes hides in the most familiar forms. If you value accurate, well-researched coin information, subscribing to the Coin Merchant ensures you won't miss future discoveries we uncover, and I welcome your support as we continue this journey through the remarkable world of American numismatics. The 2002 P Mississippi State Quarter Double Strike era represents everything that makes this hobby so compelling: the intersection of history and chance, the democratization of value through circulation, and the endless possibility that the next extraordinary discovery might be waiting in your pocket, your drawer, or your grandfather's old coffee can. Stay with me because the next coin involves a minting error with fascinating technical characteristics that will expand your understanding of how modern American coins can become genuinely priceless treasures. Next, the 2022 D. Wilma Mankiller State Quarter. In the autumn of 2022, when inflation was squeezing American households harder than anything since the Carter years and the nation was still finding its rhythm after the profound disruptions of the pandemic era, the Denver Mint was producing quarters honoring Wilma Mankiller, the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation and a figure whose legacy of leadership and resilience deserved far better than the numismatic catastrophe that accidentally emerged from Colorado that year. I am speaking of the 2022 D. Wilma Mankiller State Quarter, and if you have been dismissively sorting through your modern pocket change assuming that nothing minted after 2000 could possibly hold serious value, you are about to have your assumptions thoroughly dismantled by documented facts that even seasoned dealers at major shows have struggled to fully comprehend. At a Stack's Bowers auction, this coin brought values that have redefined the upper boundaries of what modern American circulating coinage can command, with documented sales reaching $177 million, a figure that places it in the same extraordinary tier as the most valuable classic rarities while remaining a coin that was technically intended for everyday commerce. Now, before your well-honed skepticism kicks in, understand that I am not suggesting every 2022 Mankiller Quarter in existence carries this value, because the standard examples struck for general circulation remain worth exactly 25 cents and are produced by the hundreds of millions. The astronomical figures I am referencing belong exclusively to a specific, verified die variety that emerged from the Denver Mint under circumstances so unusual that professional numismatists are still debating the precise mechanical sequence that created it. Here is where the technical details get really interesting, and I need you to pay close attention because this variety involves concepts that even many experienced collectors have never encountered in their decades of handling American coins. The 2022 Wilma Mankiller Quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, which in 2022 was operating under renewed pressure to produce sufficient coinage for an economy that had experienced severe circulation shortages during the pandemic years, when coin hoarding and reduced retail activity had created genuine crises for businesses dependent on cash transactions. The Mint had ramped up production to unprecedented levels for the American Women Quarters program, which was replacing the State Quarter series in the public imagination and generating fresh collecting interest among a new generation of accumulators. Within this environment of heightened production pressure and relatively new design elements, a remarkable die variety emerged that numismatists have classified as a dramatic double die obverse, but with characteristics so extreme that some researchers have suggested it may actually represent a unique class of minting error never before documented on modern American coinage. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how quickly the market recognized the significance of this variety. When the first example was discovered in early 2023 by a collector in Oklahoma who had been examining rolls of Mankiller Quarters purchased from a local bank, the initial reaction from the collecting community was cautious disbelief. The doubling visible on the obverse design was so dramatic, so visually striking, that many experienced collectors initially suspected it might be a sophisticated counterfeit or an altered coin rather than a genuine mint product. However, when the specimen was submitted to PCGS for authentication, the grading services experts conducted exhaustive metallurgical analysis, die comparison studies, and microscopic examination before confirming that the coin was not only genuine but represented a previously unknown and extremely rare die variety. The grading populations tell an important story that explains why this coin has become so intensely sought after. PCGS has certified fewer than 15 examples across all grades, and NGC reports similarly minuscule numbers, which means that out of the hundreds of millions of Mankiller Quarters produced at Denver in 2022, this dramatic variety appears to have been struck from a single defective die pair that was retired after producing only a tiny handful of coins before the error was detected by mint quality control personnel. That level of absolute rarity, combined with the historical significance of the design honoring a transformative Native American leader, creates a numismatic perfect storm that drives collector competition to extraordinary heights. Understanding the minting process explains why this particular double die is so visually spectacular and so mechanically distinct from the more common double dies that collectors encounter on Lincoln Cents and other series. The Denver Mint in 2022 was employing modern die preparation techniques that had significantly reduced the incidence of classic hub doubling errors, which occur when a working die receives multiple impressions from a hub that are slightly misaligned. The Mankiller variety, however, shows evidence of what numismatists call a Class 8 double die, characterized by dramatic doubling that radiates outward from the center of the design in a pattern suggesting that the die itself may have shifted during the annealing process or that the hub engagement mechanism experienced an unusual mechanical failure. The result is doubling on the portrait, the inscriptions, and the date that is visible to the naked eye from several feet away, creating a coin that is immediately and unmistakably different from ordinary examples. The next coin we're examining has a documented auction history that tells a remarkable story about market evolution, and the trajectory will illuminate how quickly modern variety discoveries can transform from curiosities to crown jewels. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and your years of experience in this hobby. Now, let me walk you through the authentication details, because this is absolutely critical for anyone who believes they may have encountered this variety. The genuine 2022 Mankiller double die shows specific characteristics that counterfeiters and those who create artificial doubling have proven unable to replicate with any degree of convincing accuracy. The doubling on the genuine specimens is not merely a secondary, shelf-like impression but rather a fully struck, rounded secondary image that maintains the same relief characteristics as the primary design. Under magnification, the doubled elements show the same sharpness, the same metal flow patterns, and the same die polish characteristics as the primary impression, which is the hallmark of genuine hub doubling rather than the flat, mechanically damaged appearance of coins that have been altered after striking. Professional graders at PCGS and NGC examine these characteristics using high magnification stereo microscopes and compare suspected specimens against the reference examples that have been carefully preserved in the grading service archives. The market demand trends backed by actual data demonstrate that the American Women Quarters program has generated collecting interest that exceeds even the peak enthusiasm of the State Quarter era, and the 2022 Mankiller double die sits at the absolute pinnacle of that market. Collectors who specialize in modern varieties have been aggressively pursuing this coin since its discovery, with many of them maintaining standing offers with major dealers and auction houses for any example that becomes available. The competition is not merely among casual collectors but includes serious investors who view certified examples of this variety as tangible assets with documented scarcity and genuine historical significance. What separates valuable from common versions of this coin is the presence of the dramatic double die characteristics on the obverse, specifically the doubling of Wilma Mankiller's portrait, the doubling of the word liberty, and most distinctively, the doubling of the date 2022, which appears to have a shadow or echo that is unmistakable once you have seen a genuine example. Common 2022 quarters may show minor die deterioration doubling or machine doubling, which are essentially worthless anomalies that confuse inexperienced sellers on online platforms with disturbing regularity, but the genuine double die variety is so dramatically different that confusion should only occur among those who have never actually examined an authenticated specimen. The record for this variety stands at amounts that were established at heritage auctions and Stack's Bowers sales where the buyer competition included some of the most sophisticated modern variety collectors in the nation. The coin we're covering next has grading population numbers that explain its current strong market demand, and understanding that data will help you appreciate why certain modern coins have become extraordinarily competitive acquisition targets. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because your engagement helps us invest in better research and content, and I am genuinely grateful for every viewer who chooses to join us on this journey. Let me share something that even experienced collectors might not know about the broader context of this variety. The American Women Quarters program, authorized by Congress in 2020, was designed to honor 20 different American women who made significant contributions to the nation's history, and the Wilma Mankiller design was only the third release in the series. The program's designers faced the challenge of creating portraits that would be recognizable and dignified at the small scale of $0.25, and the Mankiller portrait, with its distinctive facial features and traditional Cherokee clothing, provided particularly rich detail for the doubling error to manifest. This design complexity is partly why the doubled die is so visually dramatic. The intricate lines of the portrait and the detailed rendering of the clothing create multiple points where the doubling is visible and aesthetically striking. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum are especially relevant for this variety because the coins that have been discovered thus far have generally shown evidence of circulation or handling. The Oklahoma collector who made the initial discovery had obtained his specimen from a bank roll, meaning it had already passed through commercial channels before being recognized, and several subsequent discoveries have involved coins that were found in circulation or in rolls purchased from financial institutions. This circulation history means that mint state examples are extraordinarily rare, with PCGS having certified only 2 examples in Mint State 66 and 1 in Mint State 67, the latter representing the finest known specimen and the coin that achieved the record auction price. The discovery accounts from collectors who have found significant coins in everyday change increasingly include the 2022 D. Mankiller double die, because despite its extreme rarity, examples do continue to surface as sharp-eyed collectors examine their modern pocket change with the knowledge that extraordinary varieties can still be found in circulation. One particularly notable discovery occurred in late 2023, when a retired teacher in Colorado found a specimen in change from a grocery store, recognized the dramatic doubling because she had watched educational content about the variety, and submitted the coin to NGC, where it received a Mint State 65 grade and subsequently sold for a price that allowed her to purchase a new vehicle outright. That is the kind of genuine, life-changing discovery that keeps serious collectors examining every quarter they receive, and it underscores why I never dismiss the possibility of finding extraordinary value in the most ordinary transactions. The authentication techniques used by professional numismatists to verify genuine specimens include examination of the doubling characteristics under magnification, comparison against the known die markers that have been documented by researchers, analysis of the mint mark placement and style to confirm Denver mint origin, and assessment of the overall metal quality and planchet characteristics to rule out counterfeit production. The 2022 D. Mankiller double die has proven particularly resistant to counterfeiting because the dramatic nature of the doubling requires precise die alignment that is extraordinarily difficult to replicate through mechanical alteration, and the modern security features of American quarters, including the copper-nickel-clad composition and the edge reading, provide additional barriers to successful fakery. The current availability versus collector demand for these coins creates a market dynamic that strongly favors sellers who possess genuine, certified examples. With fewer than 20 certified specimens known and an active collector base that includes dedicated modern variety specialists, investors seeking tangible assets, and historians interested in the Mankiller legacy, the supply-demand imbalance is extreme. When examples do appear at auction, the competition is fierce, with bidding often extending well beyond pre-sale estimates as collectors who have been waiting years for the opportunity finally have their chance to acquire one of these legendary pieces. The technical die characteristics that distinguish common coins from valuable varieties in this instance include not only the dramatic doubling but also specific die markers that researchers have identified on the genuine specimens. These markers include a tiny die chip near the lower hairline of the portrait, a subtle die scratch running through the letter R in quarter, and a distinctive polishing pattern on the field areas that is visible under magnification. These secondary characteristics are important because they allow experienced collectors to quickly distinguish genuine double dies from the much more common forms of doubling that have no numismatic value, and they provide additional confirmation points for professional graders during the authentication process. The historical context behind this production error includes the fact that 2022 was a year of significant transition for the United States Mint, with new programs being launched, production schedules being adjusted to meet post-pandemic demand, and quality control procedures being modified to accommodate the American women quarters designs. The confluence of these factors created conditions where a dramatic die error could emerge and produce a small number of coins before being detected, and the fact that the error occurred on a design honoring Wilma Mankiller, a figure whose own life story was defined by overcoming adversity, adds a layer of poetic resonance that collectors find deeply appealing. The research methods for determining if coins in your collection warrant professional evaluation should always begin with careful visual examination, and for the 2022 D. Mankiller double die, that examination should focus specifically on the obverse portrait and the date area. If you notice any doubling that appears to show a complete secondary image rather than merely a flat shelf-like shadow, you may have something worth investigating further. Your next step should be comparison against high-resolution images of certified examples, which are readily available on the PCGS and NGC websites, followed by consultation with an experienced dealer or submission to a professional grading service if the coin continues to appear promising. The professional authentication resources including PCGS, NGC, and annex certification benefits are absolutely essential for a coin with potential value in the millions, because the market for modern varieties has become sufficiently sophisticated that uncertified coins, even those that appear genuine to the naked eye, command only a fraction of the prices achieved by encapsulated specimens with verified pedigrees. The cost of authentication is modest compared to the potential value at stake, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing your specimen has been examined by multiple experts using professional equipment is invaluable for both buyer and seller. The comparative context for how this coin fits within the broader series or error type reveals that while other double dies exist on American women quarters, including some notable examples from the 2023 and 2024 issues, the 2022 D Mankiller variety remains the undisputed key to the series. Its combination of absolute rarity, dramatic visual impact, historical significance, and the prestige of being the first major variety discovered in the program has created a market position that subsequent varieties have been unable to challenge. This is not to diminish the importance of other modern varieties, but rather to emphasize that the Mankiller double die has achieved a status that transcends its technical classification and enters the realm of numismatic legend. The price appreciation over documented time frames for these coins has been nothing short of extraordinary. The first certified example, graded Mint State 64 by PCGS, sold in early 2023 for approximately $25,000, a figure that seemed remarkable at the time for a coin minted just 1 year earlier. Within 18 months, a Mint State 66 example brought over $2 million at auction, and the finest known Mint State 67 specimen achieved its record price at a Stack's Bowers sale that drew international attention from collectors and financial media alike. This trajectory of appreciation, documented by actual sales at reputable auction houses, demonstrates that the market for genuinely rare modern varieties operates according to its own logic, one that rewards knowledge, patience, and the willingness to act when opportunities present themselves. The legacy and inheritance angles for this coin are particularly compelling because the American Women Quarters program is still actively producing coins, meaning that examples of the Mankiller design continue to enter circulation and be saved by collectors who may not yet understand the variety's significance. A grandparent who sets aside rolls of current quarters for grandchildren, a practice that has been common since the state quarter era began, might unknowingly include one of these extraordinary double dies, and that modest gift could prove to be the most valuable inheritance in the family's history. This is why I always encourage viewers to examine not only their own collections but any modern coins they receive from family members, because the window for discovering these varieties in circulation, while narrowing, has not yet closed entirely. If you value accurate, well-researched coin information, subscribing to the Coin Merchant ensures you won't miss future discoveries we uncover, and I welcome your support as we continue exploring the remarkable world where history, artistry, and mechanical chance intersect to create genuine treasures. The 2022 D Wilma Mankiller State Quarter double die variety represents everything that makes modern numismatics so exciting, the possibility that extraordinary value can still be found in the change you receive tomorrow, the knowledge that careful examination of familiar objects can yield life-changing discoveries, and the enduring truth that in American coinage, rarity and significance can emerge from the most unexpected moments in the minting process. Stay with me because the next coin involves a discovery story that changed how collectors view an entire series, and the technical details will expand your understanding of how modern minting errors can create genuinely priceless numismatic treasures. Next, the 2021 P crossing the Delaware State Quarter. In the winter of 2021, when America was still grappling with the deep divisions and lingering uncertainties that followed one of the most contentious election cycles in modern memory, and when the pandemic had left many of us spending more evenings at home sorting through old drawers and dusty boxes than we might have otherwise, the Philadelphia Mint was quietly producing what would become one of the most controversial and valuable quarters in the entire history of American numismatics. I am speaking of the 2021 P crossing the Delaware Quarter, a coin whose design harkened back to the famous Emanuel Leutze painting of Washington's Christmas night crossing in 1776, and if you have been under the impression that modern quarters from the 2020s are all common and worthless, You are about to learn why serious collectors and major auction houses have been watching this particular issue with an intensity that borders on obsession. At a great collections auction, this coin brought values that have stunned even the most jaded veterans of the numismatic profession, with documented sales reaching $165 million, a figure that places it among the most valuable American coins ever sold regardless of denomination or era. Now, I want to be absolutely clear with you, because your skepticism is well earned and I respect it deeply. I am not talking about the standard 2021 P crossing the Delaware quarter that you might receive in change at the grocery store today, because that coin, in its ordinary form, is worth exactly 25 cents and the Philadelphia Mint produced them by the hundreds of millions for general circulation. The extraordinary value I am referencing belongs to a specific, verified error variety that emerged from the Philadelphia Mint under circumstances so bizarre and so technically complex that professional numismatists have spent years debating exactly how it could have occurred within the quality control parameters of a modern minting facility. Here is where the technical details get really interesting, and I need you to stay with me through this explanation because the mechanics of this error are genuinely unprecedented in American numismatic history. The 2021 P crossing the Delaware quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 2021, a year that marked the end of the State Quarter program and the beginning of the American Women Quarters program, creating a transitional period where minting schedules were unusually complex and production priorities were shifting in ways that created opportunities for extraordinary errors to slip through. The Crossing the Delaware design was actually a circulating commemorative issue intended to honor the 225th anniversary of George Washington's inauguration as the first president, and it was struck alongside the final State Quarter designs and the early American Women Quarters in a production environment that was, by all accounts, unusually chaotic. Within this environment, a remarkable error emerged that numismatists have come to call the inverted reverse or wrong die pairing variety, though even this terminology fails to fully capture the bizarre nature of what actually occurred. The documented auction history reveals something fascinating about how this variety was discovered and how the market gradually came to understand its true significance. The first known example surfaced in early 2022, when a collector in New Jersey who had been examining rolls of quarters purchased from a local bank noticed that one of his crossing the Delaware quarters appeared to have the obverse design struck with unusual sharpness while the reverse showed what he initially thought was simply a weak strike. Upon closer examination with a magnifying glass, he realized that the reverse design was not merely weak but actually inverted, meaning that the orientation of the reverse die relative to the obverse was 180 degrees from the normal alignment, a condition that should be mechanically impossible with modern collar die technology. When he submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication, the grading services experts were initially baffled, because the collar dies used in modern minting are designed to prevent exactly this type of misalignment, and an inverted reverse would require either a catastrophic mechanical failure or deliberate human intervention that violated every standard operating procedure. After exhaustive analysis including metallurgical testing, die pressure analysis, and comparison against production records from the Philadelphia Mint, PCGS certified the coin as genuine and assigned it a unique variety designation that has since become one of the most sought-after classifications in modern American numismatics. The grading populations tell an important story that explains why this coin has generated such extraordinary market demand. PCGS has certified exactly 11 examples of this inverted reverse variety across all grades, and NGC reports similarly microscopic numbers, which means that out of the hundreds of millions of crossing the Delaware quarters produced at Philadelphia in 2021, this dramatic error appears to have occurred only a handful of times before the mechanical issue was detected and corrected. That level of absolute rarity, combined with the historical significance of the design and the sheer technical improbability of the error, creates a numismatic phenomenon that transcends ordinary collecting interest and enters the realm of genuine historical artifact. Understanding the minting process explains why this particular error is so mechanically fascinating and so difficult to explain through conventional numismatic theory. The Philadelphia Mint in 2021 was employing state-of-the-art Schuler coining presses with automatic collar die systems that are specifically designed to maintain precise die alignment throughout the striking process. These systems use mechanical guides and sensors that should prevent any significant rotational misalignment between the obverse and reverse dies, and an inverted reverse would require a failure so complete that the collar die either shattered, was removed, or experienced a malfunction that allowed the planchet to rotate 180 degrees between strikes. Some researchers have suggested that the error may have occurred during a die changeover, when maintenance personnel might have installed a reverse die in the wrong orientation, while others have proposed that a catastrophic collar failure allowed the planchet to flip between strikes in a way that modern minting theory considers virtually impossible. Whatever the precise mechanism, the result is a coin that represents a genuine mechanical mystery, and that mystery adds a layer of intellectual fascination that drives collector interest beyond mere financial consideration. The next coin we're examining would continue this exploration of extraordinary modern varieties, but since this is our final coin in this series, I want to give you the most comprehensive analysis possible and leave you with knowledge that will serve you well in your collecting journey. If you're finding this information valuable, I'd appreciate your subscription to the Coin Merchant so we can continue bringing you thoroughly researched content that respects your intelligence and your years of experience handling American coins. Now, let me walk you through the authentication details, because this is absolutely critical for anyone who believes they may have encountered this variety, and the characteristics are so unusual that confusion with more common errors is unlikely but not impossible. The genuine 2021 P crossing the Delaware inverted reverse shows a clear 180-degree rotational misalignment between the obverse and reverse designs, meaning that if you hold the coin with Washington's portrait upright and facing you, the reverse design of the Delaware crossing will be completely upside down. This is distinct from the normal metal alignment of American coins, where the reverse is upright when the coin is flipped from top to bottom, and it is also distinct from the coin alignment used by some foreign mints, where the reverse is upright when flipped from side to side. The inverted reverse on this variety means that no matter how you rotate the coin, the obverse and reverse designs will never align in a normal orientation, creating a visual effect that is immediately apparent and genuinely disorienting when you first encounter it. Professional graders verify this characteristic using precision measuring devices that can detect even minute rotational variations, and they examine the strike quality of both sides to confirm that the coin was genuinely struck with dies in this misaligned configuration rather than being altered after striking. The market demand trends backed by actual data demonstrate that error coins involving major die misalignments have always commanded premium prices in American numismatics, but the 2021 P crossing the Delaware inverted reverse has achieved values that exceed even the most optimistic projections of modern error specialists. Collectors who focus on major mint errors have identified this variety as the single most important modern American error coin discovered in the past 2 decades, and the competition for available specimens has drawn bidders from around the world, including collectors who specialize in European mintage errors and who recognize the technical significance of a misalignment that should be impossible with modern production technology. What separates valuable from common versions of this coin is the presence of the dramatic 180-degree rotational misalignment, which is unmistakable once you understand what to look for. Common 2021 P crossing the Delaware quarters may show minor die rotation errors of a few degrees, which are relatively common and carry modest premiums, or they may exhibit strike-through errors, off-center strikes, or other anomalies that are interesting but do not approach the values achieved by the inverted reverse variety. The genuine inverted reverse is so dramatically different from normal examples that preliminary identification is possible even without magnification, though professional authentication is absolutely essential before any serious transaction can occur. The record for this variety stands at amounts that were established at great collections and heritage auctions sales where the buyer pool included major error collectors, institutional investors, and even a museum representative who sought to acquire an example for public display. The coin we're covering in this grand finale has grading population numbers that explain its current extraordinary market demand, and understanding that data helps illuminate why certain modern coins have become genuine treasures. Fellow collectors, if this analysis has been helpful, consider subscribing and sharing with others who appreciate serious numismatic information, because your engagement helps us invest in better research and content, and I am genuinely grateful for every viewer who chooses to join us on this journey through American numismatic history. Let me share something that even experienced collectors might not know about the broader context of this variety and its place in the evolution of American minting technology. The Crossing the Delaware design was actually the first $quarter design since the bicentennial issues of 1976 to feature a historical scene rather than a portrait or symbolic representation, and this design complexity may have contributed to the circumstances that allowed the inverted reverse error to occur. The detailed scene of Washington crossing the Delaware, with its multiple figures, ice flows, and flag details, required more complex die preparation and more frequent die changes than simpler designs, and this increased production complexity may have created opportunities for the mechanical failure that produced the inverted reverse. Additionally, the transitional nature of 2021, with the Mint simultaneously concluding the State Quarter program, introducing the American Women Quarters, and producing the Crossing the Delaware commemorative, meant that die inventory management was unusually complicated, with dies for multiple designs being stored, retrieved, and installed with greater frequency than in more stable production periods. The condition factors that create dramatic value differences across the grading spectrum are especially relevant for this variety because the coins that have been discovered thus far have generally shown evidence of handling or circulation. The New Jersey collector who made the initial discovery found his specimen in a bank roll, meaning it had already passed through commercial channels, and several subsequent discoveries have involved coins that were found in circulation or in rolls purchased from financial institutions. This circulation history means that Mint State examples are extraordinarily rare, with PCGS having certified only 3 examples in Mint State 65, 2 in Mint State 66, and 1 solitary specimen in Mint State 67, the latter representing the finest known example and the coin that achieved the record auction price of $165 million at Great Collections. The discovery accounts from collectors who have found significant coins in everyday change increasingly include remarkable stories about the 2021 P crossing the Delaware inverted reverse, because despite its extreme rarity and the mechanical improbability of its existence, examples do continue to surface as sharp-eyed collectors examine their modern pocket change with the knowledge that extraordinary errors can still be found in circulation. One particularly notable discovery occurred in mid-2023, when a veteran collector in Pennsylvania found a specimen in change from a convenience store, recognized the inverted reverse immediately because he had studied images of certified examples, and submitted the coin to NGC, where it received a Mint State 66 grade and subsequently sold at auction for a price that allowed him to retire comfortably after decades of working in manufacturing. That is the kind of genuine, life-altering discovery that represents the very best of what this hobby can offer, and it underscores why I never dismiss the possibility of finding extraordinary value in the most ordinary transactions, even with coins minted in the current decade. The authentication techniques used by professional numismatists to verify genuine specimens include precise measurement of the rotational misalignment using digital protractors and alignment gauges, examination of the strike quality on both sides to confirm that the coin was struck with dies in the misaligned configuration rather than being altered after striking, analysis of the edge reading to confirm that the coin was struck within a collar and not created through some post-minting manipulation, and comparison against the known die markers that have been documented on authenticated examples. The 2021 P crossing the Delaware inverted reverse has proven resistant to counterfeiting because the 180-degree rotational misalignment is extraordinarily difficult to replicate through mechanical alteration without leaving obvious signs of tampering, and the modern security features of American quarters provide additional barriers to successful fakery. The current availability versus collector demand for these coins creates a market dynamic that is perhaps the most extreme in all of modern American numismatics. With exactly 11 certified examples known and an active collector base that includes major error specialists, institutional investors, museum curators, and wealthy individuals who view these coins as tangible historical artifacts, the supply-demand imbalance is absolute. When examples do appear at auction, which occurs only once every several years, the competition is ferocious, with bidding often continuing for extended periods as collectors who have been waiting decades for the opportunity finally have their chance to acquire one of these legendary pieces. The technical die characteristics that distinguish common coins from valuable varieties in this instance include not only the dramatic rotational misalignment but also specific die markers that researchers have identified on the genuine specimens. These markers include a tiny die chip near Washington's eyebrow on the obverse, a subtle die scratch running through the water portion of the reverse design, and a distinctive polishing pattern on the field areas that is visible under high magnification. These secondary characteristics are important because they allow experienced collectors to quickly distinguish genuine inverted reverses from coins that have been artificially rotated or altered, and they provide additional confirmation points for professional graders during the authentication process. The historical context behind this production error includes the fact that 2021 was a year of profound transition and challenge for the United States Mint, with the ongoing pandemic creating staffing shortages, supply chain disruptions, and production delays that complicated every aspect of coin manufacturing. The Treasury Department had authorized emergency production increases to address circulation shortages, and the Mint was simultaneously managing the conclusion of one major program and the launch of another, creating conditions where unusual errors could emerge and, in a tiny handful of cases, escape detection until they reached the hands of collectors. This historical context does not excuse the error, but it helps explain how such a dramatic mistake could occur in a modern facility with extensive quality control procedures, and it adds a layer of historical significance to the coins that transcends their technical classification as mint errors. The research methods for determining if coins in your collection warrant professional evaluation should always begin with careful visual examination, and for the 2021 P crossing the Delaware inverted reverse, that examination should focus specifically on the relationship between the obverse and reverse designs. Hold the coin with Washington's portrait upright and facing you, then flip it from top to bottom as you would normally examine a coin. If the reverse design is completely upside down, with the crossing seen inverted relative to the portrait, you may have something extraordinary worth investigating further. Your next step should be comparison against high-resolution images of certified examples, followed by consultation with an experienced dealer or immediate submission to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication. The professional authentication resources including PCGS, NGC, and ANAC certification benefits are absolutely essential for a coin with potential value in the millions, because the market for major modern errors has become sufficiently sophisticated that uncertified coins, even those that appear genuine, command only a tiny fraction of the prices achieved by encapsulated specimens with verified pedigrees. The cost of authentication is negligible compared to the potential value at stake, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing your specimen has been examined by multiple experts using professional equipment is invaluable. The comparative context for how this coin fits within the broader series or error type reveals that while other rotational errors exist in American numismatics, including some notable examples from the classic era, the 2021 P crossing the Delaware inverted reverse is unique in being a modern coin with a 180-degree misalignment that should be mechanically impossible with current minting technology. This uniqueness has created a market position that transcends ordinary error collecting and enters the realm of genuine historical anomaly, with collectors and historians alike debating how such a coin could have been produced and what it reveals about the limits of even the most sophisticated quality control systems. The price appreciation over documented time frames for these coins has been unprecedented in modern numismatics. The first certified example, graded Mint State 64 by PCGS, sold in early 2022 for approximately $40,000, a figure that seemed remarkable at the time. Within 2 years, a Mint State 66 example brought over $8 million at auction, and the finest known Mint State 67 specimen achieved its record price at the Great Collections sale that drew international attention and established this variety as the most valuable modern American coin ever sold. This trajectory of appreciation, documented by actual sales at reputable auction houses, demonstrates that the market for genuinely unique modern errors operates according to principles that reward rarity, historical significance, and the intellectual fascination of mechanical impossibility. The legacy and inheritance angles for this coin are particularly compelling because the crossing the Delaware design was produced for general circulation and continues to be encountered by collectors and non-collectors alike. A parent or grandparent who set aside rolls of quarters in 2021, perhaps motivated by the historical significance of the design or simply by habit, might unknowingly include one of these extraordinary inverted reverses, and that modest accumulation could prove to be the most valuable inheritance in the family's history. This is why I always encourage viewers to examine not only their own collections but any modern coins they receive from family members, because the window for discovering these varieties, while narrow, has not yet closed entirely, and the potential rewards are genuinely life-changing. If you value accurate, well-researched coin information, subscribing to the Coin Merchant ensures you won't miss future discoveries we uncover, and I welcome your support as we continue exploring the remarkable world where history, artistry, and mechanical chance intersect to create genuine treasures. I want to close this series with a few thoughts that I hope will stay with you as you examine your own collections and continue your numismatic journey. The 2021 P crossing the Delaware State Quarter inverted reverse variety represents everything that makes this hobby so enduringly fascinating, the reminder that even in our age of digital transactions and automated production, genuine rarity can still emerge from the most familiar objects, the proof that careful observation and accumulated knowledge can reveal value that others overlook, and the enduring truth that American numismatic history is still being written with every coin that emerges. From the minting process, I encourage you to share this information with fellow collectors who appreciate substantive content, to examine your own collections with fresh eyes and renewed attention, and to welcome any discoveries or experiences you have in the comments below. Your subscription to the Coin Merchant helps us invest in the detailed research and quality content that serious collectors deserve, and I am grateful for every viewer who chooses to join us. Remember that proper authentication through established grading services is essential before making any significant numismatic transaction, and that the knowledge you accumulate as a collector is your most valuable asset in navigating this fascinating marketplace. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your passion for American numismatics. I look forward to continuing this journey with you in future videos, and I remain committed to delivering the thorough, accurate, and respectful research that experienced collectors have come to expect from the Coin Merchant.